Hey, it's Michelle. Our assignment is over the book Teaching with the Brain in Mind, and we're talking about emotions and environments engagements. And so the first prompt is, do you ever use rewards with children? If so, when would it be appropriate? Um, Let me go ahead and just read from the reading really quick. Something I noted. The brain makes its own rewards. They're called opiates, and they can produce a natural high similar to that produced by morphine, alcohol, nicotine, heroin, and cocaine. It probably does not matter to the brain whether the reward is concrete, like money or objects of value, or more cognitive, like privilege and status, recognition, attention, security, or fame. Working like a thermostat or a personal trainer, the brain's reward system ordinarily doles out good feelings on a daily basis, which suggests that the brain has a built in bias to experience pleasurable causes and effects. But rewards are not as simple as a yes or no question. It turns out that the brain may have different types of reward signal systems. Fiorillo, Tabler, and Schultz, 2003, those were the researchers. One of the systems includes codes for reward prediction and the other for error correction. The first system creates attentiveness, more if the reinforcer is random, and the second creates better learning. So, um, that excerpt from the reading, with that in mind, the brain's pathways for rewards are complex. They involve the task of prediction, detection, goal orientation, planning, pleasure, expectations, and memory. Um, so I've worked in many settings with different groups of children. For instance, in a girls' home, a behavioral home, I was a home mentor, and so the reward system we had was more goal orientation, detecting their behaviors and their life skills and predicting their outcomes based on what they were working on. So we used a reward system, incentive tickets, and we had enforced positive behaviors and also would take away tickets for negative behaviors. So they were earning their choices and their privileges, like getting to decide what to cook for a meal or going to the movies or camping outside. Were some choices. The girls got to define what they were earning and what was interesting them, and then they were working towards those goals. So sometimes they got really sick of the tickets. They wouldn't work, or they just didn't care. So sometimes we would have to change things about with that process. Another thing, I work with a lot of scouts, Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, but they have different ranks is when they get their badges and their awards. And so they have to do so much service in between their ranks, as far as volunteering, social service, conservation service. And so that's more planning involved, goal oriented, pleasure, things that they're interested in aren't necessarily going to be what all the scouts are interested in. They're more intrinsic motivations, things that interest them. For instance, some scouts just want to go camping. They don't want to do any of the badge work. Other ones are more driven to where they want to earn their Eagle Scout. And so they know all the different Eagle Scout badges that are mandatory. And then, you have scouts that just have their sash filled with merit badges of things they're interested in, others just what they have to earn. So that does explain a lot on their motivations and their interests, going along with expectations of the scouts as well. But a lot of them do that for pleasure. They've got goals, and parents that are supporting them. In Montessori and at Old Woman Creek, the nature preserve I worked at, these goals were more self-enjoyment, we would use terms like, when we do this, we can do this. So if we all are prepared and ready and are able to focus, we can go outside, and we can go observe and hike and look for evidence. Those are some things I would talk to with my preschoolers at Montessori. And they really wanted to do that. They would get so excited. And it was very pleasurable. I think in January, we'll do that the next talk. But and then I did a lot of ecological restoration or service learning with adults and high schoolers. And so we talked, like, would we give them trees? Would we give them plants? Would we give them books? Like, what did we want to give them for doing their service at Old Woman Creek? And me and the other environment educator decided that this is service learning. This is learning, methods of conservation and preservation and restoration. My dog's barking, sorry. And so we really just wanted them to, in the activity, appreciate where they were, have awareness about their connections and relationships to the nature around them. Max, come in. Sorry. And just really promote those behaviors of stewardship and environmental action. And so when we did that, we were noticing how much joy that students in the community were feeling just by participating. They felt like they were really contributing, removing invasive species and planting native species, and getting the exercise and hiking, and the fresh air, and just the community time together. It really was great to see that just develop on its own, where not only did they feel like they were restoring the earth, but also themselves, and they were enjoying the relationships with each other. Those are some of my favorite moments, actually. And then I've got settings in like the public school system when I was substitute teaching, pre-K through 12. And then the vocational school as well, EHOV by us. I think there's I don't even know, maybe 13 counties in our area that attend this vocational school in all kinds of disciplines. So it was really nice to be a substitute teacher and have, whether it was charger bucks for the Edison School students, where there were 3 things I could catch them doing, and to be rewarded, I would sign their name, or they would sign their name. I would check the box, they showed respect, or they were responsible, they were on task. I think maybe those are about 3 of the choices there. And then at the end of the week, they would pull from a bucket of charger bucks, and 1 or 2 student per grade would be like the supercharger of the week, and they're on the announcements, and they wear a cape, and it was, the school's plan to really promote pride with the students and encourage those positive behaviors. So these are, and then in the vocational school, they had a drug-free group. So if you could prove that you're drug-free in high school, you got to leave school 15 minutes early every day. You got vouchers or gift cards to like the coffee shop or Subway. And so these things were really helpful to help people really form their self-identity and stick close to their values. I really put a lot of stake into concepts like that, especially with all the peer pressure and the opiate epidemic that we're having here in the state of Ohio. So I do feel that rewards can be important. if I could leave the summary for that, as a whole, the collected research leads us to understand that part of the motivation problem is the way we treat students. They are not factory workers who need to be prodded, cajoled, and motivated by bribes, management, or threats. Instead of asking, how can I motivate, students ask, in what ways is the brain naturally motivated from within? Now you know, rewards are natural to the brain, and states rule our motivations and behaviors. Start with meaningful, developmental, appropriate curriculum. And add learner choice and positive social groupings. So create the challenge, build a supportive environment with compelling biases, and get out of the way. So yeah, I think everybody, for the environment and the audience, a group of students that you're collectively teaching or working with, see what the needs are, see what the interests are, go from there with your rewards. But I mean, it can become habitual, so maybe keep it spontaneous, keep it at certain intervals or ranks, and a lot really goes into those experiences, like in Scouts or the Montessori or an outdoor education, where they really just are doing it because they want to. And I think that really promotes our best changes in behavior and attitudes and perceptions, and increases value. Really do. Okay, so moving on to the next one. I don't think I had as much to say, but the next prompt I wanted to discuss was, and this time I'm trying to go without a script, so yeah, I'm a little bit more on task with the script, but it's not as personable. So C, the other prompt is, name at least one thing you do in your environment that helps develop critical thinking skills. Why did you choose this activity, and do you have research to support it? If so, state the author of the research. So, critical thinking skills take time to learn because you're asking the brain to make changes in both cortical organization and interregional connectivity. Learning new skills reorganize his brain mass. And so research concludes the performance of an individual in an experiment is inherently grounded in the social situation of their performance. Karhi, 1985, page 21 of Teaching with the Brain in Mind, talks about this. The data suggests that schools would do well to focus on more real-world learning, field trips, simulations, role plays, and away from school activities that use school knowledge and skills make more sense than a focus on field-independent classroom learning. So with that in mind, at my Montessori school, I'm doing nature, and I'm working with Max, come on. So sorry, there's either a dog out there or people. He's protecting me. So with that in mind, we're going back to Max, come here. Sorry, he's just gonna keep barking. Lay down. Lay down. Okay. No. He's really riled up tonight. Apologize. And so when we're talking about critical thinking, I have two examples. So the job I have now at Montessori, doing nature enrichments, is because of my previous, he's still barking, I'm sorry, is my previous job of doing environment education, outdoor learning at Oldham Creek at the Nature Preserve. So we would have the kindergartners would come visit play space 3 times a year to see the different seasons and to observe and experience it. And this reminds me of critical thinking because they're coming to the place to apply and learn how to use all their senses and observational skills as we're hiking, so that they can learn about the different habitats and the wildlife that's there and protected. They're learning that This place is for them as an outdoor learning laboratory, but also a place that's special that needs protection. So it's just simply there for us to enjoy and to study. So that is pretty cool. And I've taken those concepts to my school. We don't really have a nature-based learning protocol yet at our Montessori. It's toddler through third grade. But I've come up with study plots. So we will go to the garden, or we will go to the forest or the creek, or we will simply walk down to the beach where the lake is down the road. We will study the park, and we will just use what we have and apply those practices that we've learned on our field trip at the nature preserve and bring it back to our own school. It was really neat. I got to be sitting on the NAAEE conference last week for 3 days and learn about all the schools in America right now that are focusing on nature-based learning and outdoor classrooms, environment education, and forest schools. And this has been something that people have wanted, and now nature is becoming more of a need. We're finding, problem-solving skills, especially in inquiry-based lessons, and just the health of being connected outside to nature, how beneficial it is, and more even a possible route as we enter this challenging time in COVID. So that's what we did with our Montessori school. But what's cool is our Montessori school is next door to our city school, Huron City School, public school. And our 8th grade teacher always brings her students, science students, to Old Woman Creek as well. And they do inquiry-based lessons. And so what the students are doing is they spend all day at the nature preserve at the estuary. And one of the main lessons we do is inquiry-based, where we take a hike, we explore all the ecosystems, and they are basically quiet, using their observations, and they are, we stop maybe at like 5 spots along the hour hike, and they will write down their observations and questions. That could be anything like, why is the water brown? Or what is that bird? Or I see a tall plant growing out of the water. Or a question like, where is the water coming from? Where is it flowing to? And then we come back to the visitor center, and they would discuss what they all had observed or ask questions about. And then we would think of things we want to study along the trail. And keep in mind, our main topic focus would be water quality. So we would start discussing what everybody had wondered about or written down. And then we would come up with, let's test the water. And we would come up with the tools in the lab that we would need to do that for all the different parameters. And then we would walk back on the trail and say our first stop was the observation deck. We would stop there and assign tasks to students to do different types of studies with the water. So we might have one group doing turbidity, which is clarity of the water, one person doing dissolved oxygen, one person doing temperature, one person or a couple people. We pair people up with collaborative learning peers and groups as well to do like the pH and the nutrients that are in the water. And then we would do up to 3 sites. So maybe the first hike we stopped at 5, the second hike we would stop at 2 or 3 to do testing then based on our observations and our questions. And after we would do the tests and collect the data, we would get back together and discuss what we found. And compare data and ask questions even based on what we found, like why was the nitrate level higher in the swamp than it was in the lake, and then discuss the possibilities there and the reasoning behind it. And so I think critical thinking is really done well outside of the classroom, outdoor education in an environment which is natural, where the kids are being active, where they're working together, where they're really having to be intuitive and mindful with their self and the environment around them. And it's really just an amazing way to approach critical thinking, problem solving, inquiry-based learning, project-based learning, service learning, all these things that kids really value, kids really get interested in, motivated about, and that they remember. And what's great is if the teacher comes at the beginning of the year, they can apply it all year long. If they come at the end of the year, they can apply what they've been learning all year to that natural environment that they're investigating. So I'm hoping that with COVID and with the growing environment education movement already in our country, that with our new challenges right now, this is also presenting us with more opportunities to take the learning to other areas or outside, doing more hands-on, and just the students and the teachers really reaping the benefits of just that pleasure, that abstract reward of being a part of something and seeing the whole and contributing and learning from that, just building better self-identity, relationships with each other, and just connections with the natural world and their learning environments. So this was a little bit longer than I had hoped, but those were two pretty important concepts that we were discussing. And repetition and skill building, relevance. I think my examples would cover all those things: expectations, the resources, the learning context. I'm hoping I gave really good examples for that. I'm hoping you all are challenging yourselves to bring a lot of your teaching outdoors this year. And if it turns out we're doing more distant learning, then I think it was like chapter 7 or 6 where it even talked about social isolation and how hard that is on our learning and our cognitive development. And so if you're doing distant learning, even try to think of some of these approaches of things you could film or things you could do live or things you can do from other settings and record, to really just interest the students and make it more personal, more unique learning opportunity. And looking to NAEE, I was very hopeful and encouraged and empowered from ways some of us educators and organizations are able to or approaching this new way of educating. So with that in mind, thank you. I've really enjoyed reading more about the brain and our stages, our states of mind and body. It really is important, and it helps me understand my students better and myself so that I can be a better teacher. All right.